Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today is Sunday, July the 28th, 2024, and it's the last Sunday in the month of July. So, of course, we're going to have our Global Town Hall meeting, and I'm just about to open the door. I want everybody to attend and to tell me what is on their minds. So, let's open the door now. Let's see who's here. Oh, here's Peter Wadhams. Hello, dear.
Hi.
And here's Marilyn. Okay.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Good folks.
Hi.
Hi, Peter.
Hello, guys.
Right,
So, Peter, tell me first off how you are.
well, I'm getting better. Let me apologise first of all for my very brief replies to your questionnaire, because I can't write very much at a time. So
Right.
Your hand, is that it? One hand is your
my
right
hand, yes. So I don't have time to answer everything with both hands. So I'll have to be brief. To be brief. So.
Of course. I mean, don't apologize. It's just lovely that you're able to do anything. So that's good news. Where are you? I don't understand. I don't recognize your background.
I'm in Cambridge. I'm sort of there until I get better, which I don't know how long that's going to be.
Well, it was a bit of a stroke. Is that what happened?
Yes, it was a stroke.
It was a stroke, and you were in Cambridge when it
Yes, so I was in Cambridge for one day because I was attending a ceremony to change from electric vehicles to hydrogen vehicles in this racing system that I'm in.
Oh yeah.
So it was a big deal to change to hydrogen, although I'm not at all sure that it's a great idea. But anyway, but we had this ceremony. We had a nice time on the Thames, and then suddenly my hand stopped working, and so I've been dealing with that ever since.
That was, you were out in public in on the Thames doing something?
Yes, it was. There's a ship that goes around called the St Helena, which takes the racing drivers who are doing electric car racing to the next location.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this one was for starting to do work with a hydrogen system, which is they've gone a big bomb on literally on hydrogen.
Yeah.
And I really don't feel that it's a great idea to have tanks of high pressure hydrogen floating around in what are basically dodgem cars. But anyway, we'll see whether everybody survives or not.
Well, now, I think there are city buses that use hydrogen. In fact, I think there may be even some in Toronto, although I'm not familiar. Is it any different, do you think? Because that's the first thing that would come to my mind is, here I am driving a Hindenburg or whatever around town, ready to hear it go pop. But so I imagine most people would have certain anxiety about that. But but when it's city buses, is there any greater safety involved, or why would they do it with buses and not necessarily with race cars?
It's a matter of energy. It turns out, or it seems that hydrogen, when you carry it around in a tank, is a more efficient form of energy than in fact even an electrical. But it only works really if you have a big tank. So it's good for vehicles, public service vehicles, and any kind of big vehicle, but not for small vehicles, obviously. So to emphasize the usefulness of this kind of vehicle, they're switching this whole system from electric to hydrogen, and that's a huge difference for a company that's been making its money by making sort of dodgem cars that bash into each other, and they're electrically driven. So it's to that's been our way of doing things.
Yeah.
It's becoming hydrogen instead.
I still haven't heard from Barbara Lolar, but she had said that what she wanted to talk about was her work on pursuing natural hydrogen in nature. That apparently there are seams and deposits, or whatever you call it, of hydrogen in the earth that could be a major source of energy. That's interesting. You'd think that they would have already known exactly all about that by now.
I have a question. How would that be mined? How would they remove it from the earth?
Good question. Do you know, Peter, how they would go about it?
Just pump it out. I know what she's talking about, and there is quite a lot. In fact, there's more and more being discovered all the time of this fossil hydrogen, which helps you get around the problem that hydrogen has to be produced by various artificial methods, which
are kind of, as I understand it, that's already you've got to use some energy to produce it.
Yes, you're using about 40 to 50% of the energy that is actually having to actually produce the hydrogen, and so it's a kind of wasteful technique. But if you've got something else producing the hydrogen for you, just like you have with
okay, well, let me greet the other people. I think one guy has already gone away. I really expected me. Hello, Peace and Justice Alliance. I think you must be the Bangladesh man, aren't you?
Hi. Good afternoon. How are you, Meta?
I'm fine, but you see, it doesn't show your name, and I don't remember it, and so it's embarrassing. You have to tell us again who you are. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. My name is Muhammad Mominul Haq.
And you're from Bangladesh, and every time you come, it's that you have some thing that you want help with, and I never have been able to do a thing for you. You want to bring democracy back, if it ever was, to Bangladesh, and I think that is a great idea.
Last 1 week, we have a update. Some situation happened in Bangladesh. There was a huge massacre and killings happened in Bangladesh. The dictator, corrupt regime, they killed over thousands of youth students, and they are struggling life to death. Now the present regime going door to door to find the student and the public who did anti-government protest, that government doing human rights violation, undermining democracy. So there is a huge massacre happened in Bangladesh in last 7 days, and they killed over thousands. Now many are the victim of crimes against humanity under the directive of brutal regime. Sheikh Hasina, she is a close ally of dictator Putin. and she kept power since 2009, and this is her fourth time came to the power without people mandate and vote.
And I'm thinking we are now gearing up to do the October issue of Peace Magazine. Perhaps you'd like to write about this for the magazine. Would you like to write an article?
Yes, I want to write an article now. This is the
Yeah. Oh,
this is the going on in Bangladesh. They kill innocent, and you see the student, and I have other. You can see here one of the they see that police they killed, and they throwing the student from their.
Mm.
You see, so
Yeah.
this is going on, and they just you see the thugs of the ruling party. They give the ammunition and arms to the ruling party student wing, and they also doing all killings with the joint forces.
hmm.
So, and they firing from the you see the one of the student is can maybe 18 years or 16 years old. They killed him inside the school and colleges. They went and they killed.
Hmm.
And now, like you see this another one, police killing directly. If you say something,
We do not get any news about that here. In fact, it looks to me like when I read newspapers now, or I usually read them on my iPad, and I don't get it by paper anymore. But it just seems to me that international news about horrible things like this gets less and less coverage. That all we hear are articles about things going on in our own country, or of course in the U.S. Sometimes we hear about something going on in the UK, and then it tapers off. If you go into Europe, the farther east you go, the less you're going to hear. I just had to look up. I saw this name Fitzo, F-I-C-O, somebody was referring to, and I thought, now let me, who's that? And I had to look it up, and this is a man who's been the head or the president or something of Slovakia for something like 10 years. And I didn't even know who he was. So there's something wrong with how kind of, the coverage that we get about what's going on in the rest of the world. And of course, I'm concerned because there's also just nowhere near enough coverage of the real crisis that is looming about climate. And Peter Wadhams right here is one of the great experts in the world on the Arctic sea ice. And who cares? Who knows? Who thinks about it? Nobody. No, not enough people. No. So we need to do more to get attention to things that are really important. And so please give some thought to writing an article for Peace Magazine. Maybe 800 words would be enough, one page with a photo. And would you do that for me?
yes, how I send it?
By email, mspencer@web.net.
Okay, I will do. Sign the petition that the government of Bangladesh hold accountable who violated Rome Institute under the International Court of Justice, that they did a crime against humanity and war crimes in Bangladesh in last 1 week.
How can we help you? I don't know, but
Yeah.
Please help Bangladesh people from this massacre and crack down innocent student and public, because they are don't listening, they just killing. And they even transfer millions of dollars here in Canada, and they invested in real estate business in Canada anonymously, and they are living in Canada lavishly when millions of people in Bangladesh have no job. That is the main reason civil unrest in student protest happen in Bangladesh. Over 1 million or 2 million students have no job. Transfer poor people millions of dollars in Canada, USA, and they invested anonymously. And maximum investment happen in real estate business in Toronto and other part of the country. Now Canada government need to do real investigation and hold accountable the perpetrators of foreign corruption under the OECD agreement. But they did not do nothing. At least if you initiate an investigation and call that in Toronto, Bangladeshi community already raised that Canada need to investigate the perpetrators of corrupt regime who transfer millions of dollars poor people asset in Canada, right? But Canadian government not doing anything. They just keep quiet and in kind of people of Bangladesh thinking Canada is the safe haven for Bangladesh human rights violators.
I'm out of ideas. I want to encourage anybody else who, Katya, let's talk about your situation because you know you're not you don't probably often have to make a comparison between Iran and Bangladesh, but you also have a story to tell, I think, don't you? So tell us, if you don't mind, Mohammed, let's switch over to talking a little bit with Katya.
Unfortunately, what's happening in Bangladesh is so sad. And as Meta mentioned, we experienced kind of the same situation in Iran when the police and the government just start killing the innocent people on the street if they ask for something or some reformer. But as based on my experience, it was very helpful when Iranian people outside of the Iran, they started to run the campaign against what the behavior was government would take at that time. And they started rallying in different cities of the just global, in Europe, in USA, in Canada. And it was kind of bringing what is happening in Iran and bring the attention to attention of the entire world. It was very helpful. And I'm sure that those kind of action might just do something, not at this right away and at the same time, but somehow we need the entire world to just kind of move together to prevent some just genocide, to prevent that kind of behavior in some area.
We need a global campaign for good governance, for sure. And we need to make some institutional changes in that, but you know, the tendency is going in the other direction. There's been for the last 10, 15 years this move toward more nationalistic politics globally. Countries' right-wing nationalistic movements have been popular. I mean, we see it in the U.S. We've seen it in, when Johnson was running Britain. We've seen it in India, and now, India turned around a little bit. So maybe there's hope that things will turn around in Bangladesh. And I have no projections for what might happen in Iran. But why aren't we thinking in terms of more institutions that are global that can enforce international law? That's the only solution to most of these problems, is unless we have some way of saying if your country is headed by some kind of dictator or authoritarian ruler, and this guy attacks his own people or especially attacks another country, then you have to change. You have to get rid of that guy within 10 days, and you send, and we will authorize you to make, the international law would authorize you to make some real changes in your government. And in fact, if you don't, we'll put some penalties on your country, because you got to get rid of the bad guys if they're doing something that's contrary to international law. Why don't we try to talk more in terms of enforcement of international law? That is the only hope that I see for the future. Well, here I've got on my soapbox again. I tend to live on my soapbox. Hello, Sandy Greer. How are you, dear?
Very well, thanks, Meta.
Good. Okay. Free the people. All right. That's the story. But what if the people like to have dictators? Why is it they often actually choose authoritarian brutes to be their leaders? Why do they like it? That's the thing. I remember talking to Gene Sharp about it, and he said people love their dictators. You know that. Well, I really hadn't thought about it that way before, but it often does seem that people come to power perfectly through democratic means. I think even Hitler did.
I have to say that why people like a dictator, because not all the people in the country, few people, let's say 10% people, they like dictator because 10% people taken over all the resources by corruption, and they show loyalty to the dictatorship, and they say, okay, whatever you say, we are agree. We kill own people for the benefit of their own, and they are making like illicit assets by their families. So in this time, global governance need to create a real legislation, real action against the dictatorship. That if any country they do corruption, corruption is the one of the main reason, because you are getting benefiting illicit asset if you support the dictator.
It doesn't stand to reason that a corrupt government can distribute money so widely that people actually feel that they're better off because of having a dictatorship. I mean, that it doesn't. I don't understand how that is possible, because they actually spend much more on their own palaces and yachts and things like that. So the dictators are not people a reason to make the general population more content with their financial interests. They can't be helping the country overall. So I hear your point of view, but I don't see how logically it could be true. Am I wrong? I don't know. I mean, people certainly approve now of Putin in Russia in the general. Yeah, Sandy, straighten me out. My head's all.
There is a real reaction to social justice, basically. I mean, there's a rise in the far right, as we all know, and that's happening in Canada as well as other countries. At the same time, the Canadian federal government, Parliament, created a piece of legislation to actually put into force, if you will, a federal act supporting the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights for Indigenous Peoples. But there is a real pushback from the population. And meanwhile, so in other words, how far can you go? Even if you create a piece of legislation, if you're in a democracy, a participatory democracy, I believe what is needed are many levels of education to explain and describe to people why the human rights for Indigenous people actually benefit all of us, really. Because so currently, there are 10 Algonquin nations, First Nations in Ontario and Quebec, who are challenging a decision made by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And these Algonquin people have the support of more than 100 municipalities, non-Indigenous municipalities, who are speaking out against the decision by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to license near surface disposal facility for low and intermediate level waste very close to the Ottawa River and overlapping the traditional territories of these 10 First Nation communities. So the lead community, which I can't pronounce properly, so I'll skip that for now, but they have taken a legal action, and the first phase in a court case I watched a couple of weeks ago, and they are suggesting that by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission giving that license without properly consulting the Indigenous peoples and engaging them soon enough for them to have their voices fully heard right from the beginning of this proposal, that they have violated the United Nations Declaration Act as it has been legislated in Canada. So those lawyers said that we don't really have to follow this parliamentary law, and gave reasons. And one of the lawyers said that, of course, so he says, I don't think that basically clear cutting most of a forest is a big deal, he said. And the justice happened to be an Indigenous woman who was very professional, really presented herself in a very professional way and was very reserved and asked tough questions of everybody. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in her shoes at all. But she actually just exploded and said, are you kidding me? You don't think clear cutting most of a forest, you think that's minor?
Listen, I want to be doing more, bringing people together in the next series of forums that I put on. I'm planning them now. And one of the things I'll be doing is bringing in more people who disagree. Now, I don't like to set up debates, because when you set something up as a debate, you've already locked people into a position so they can't agree on anything. That's the whole point of a debate, is to find all the reasons for disagreeing. And you get locked into that, and it doesn't solve the problems. But I like to set up conversations between people who have maybe similar or maybe different combinations of ideas, but they haven't talked about it before. They haven't met each other. They haven't discussed issues. I want to have them discuss climate issues and then do it from the point of view of finding if we can, if possible, identify common ground that both sides could accept. And but that means I need to find whole communities of people who are not heard very much. Now, Sandy, you have a lot of contact with people, Indigenous communities, when it comes to nuclear safety issues. And I think that is a place where a lot of Indigenous Canadians have used their influence the best they can. They're really concerned about that issue. But not necessarily as much so about climate change issues. And I wonder if you can help me find communities of people who would be interested in being on a forum to talk with other people. They might not be Indigenous, or I would like to get some Indigenous people from other countries. Like, for example, the Sami in Scandinavia. They have had real experience with having political controversy over allowing experimentation in their territory. I think David Keith at Harvard wanted to send up a balloon or something a few years ago, and he asked the think he asked the Norwegian military's permission or something like that, but he didn't ask the Sami people. So the leader of the Sami people intervened to say, stop it, and they did stop it. Well, if they'd consulted them, it might have turned out differently. We don't know. But I'd like to bring Indigenous people together to talk to each other, and then to talk to people who are maybe the perpetrators, if you will, or the people who want to make some changes that might be controversial. So any of you, and I'm asking Sandy in particular because I know you have a lot of contacts, but if you can put me in touch with groups of people who have concerns about global warming issues, either in Canada or in some other country, so that might be willing to be on one of my talk shows, I'll appreciate it. Marilyn, did you raise your hand just now?
Yeah, because I may be able to help you too, because I do, I work with the environment, but I also do work with Indigenous, with MMIW, so I may be able to help on that too.
Okay, good. Tell me a little, do you mind telling here what you do along those lines? Because I didn't know this about you. The only thing I know about you is the cats. You
Oh, no.
Other life beyond cats, I think.
Yeah. Well, so I am a certified, I'm a cat behaviorist, but I work, my main thing, or what I've been doing till not too recently, is I'm concerned with how urbanization is affecting the behavior of our local mountain lions and our bobcats and wildlife in general. My best friend started something. Well, she's Dene. She's Navajo, and she started something called Grandmother's Calling, and it's part of
Grandmother's. Did you
Calling?
say
Grandmother's Calling, and it's part of MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. And so anyway, so I've been helping her quite a bit.
Hello, I want to greet everybody who shows up here. And hello, Janet, if that's who you are.
Yep. You forwarded information on the town hall, which I had not known about before, and so here I am. But I'm in Halifax. And I am interested in support, I suppose, encouraging public schools to teach climate change, to offer it in the curriculum. And that's what I'm on about at the moment.
Okay, good for you. You know what? I have just last night been putting together a questionnaire, which I sent to, I know that some of you will have or received it in your email already. I'm planning the next series of forums. Right now, I have one going called Cool Thinking, which is it discusses every week with some experts. It discusses various innovations that propose to be able to chill especially the far north, the Arctic, and cool it off and help prevent global warming in various ways, either by reflecting sunlight back into space so that some of it doesn't land in the water or on the soil, or it could be by removing carbon dioxide, which of course is ultimately an essential way of doing it, but sometimes it takes too long. Anyway, so we've been running this series, and it will end, I think there are 35 shows on this topic, and Peter Wadhams here has frequently been party to these, a panelist. It will end in, I think, about September or October. And so I have to make plans for the next series of shows. And what I have decided that I want to do is take up a bunch of controversies that all have to do with some aspect of global warming. It's not necessarily all about geoengineering as much of the current series is, but it can be other things. And one of the controversies is, should we allow and require climate change education in public schools. So I had made a list of questions last night, 20 propositions, taking a position, which I said, we should allow climate change to be taught in schools, or we should require it. And then I asked people, yes or no, you agree or don't agree? And then tell me why. Tell me the best argument for why we should allow it. And also give me your best idea of the argument that would be for not allowing it. Is there a good rationale for refusing it? We want to hear all sides, all points of view. So even if I dislike your point of view, I want to hear what you have to say, that kind of thing. So what I want to do, I made a list of 20, and I made up this questionnaire, and I sent it out by email, something like 4 a.m. After I finished making it last night. And I've asked maybe 50 of my friends to reply to it. And I'm going to ask all of you to reply to this questionnaire, if you will. So what I've done is I put the link in the chat box. And when I edit this show, I'm going to put it on the screen so everybody can know where to go to get access to that questionnaire, that survey that I'm doing. And I want you to, if you'll take, it'll take you 20 minutes or so to do it, I imagine. It's, the 20 different issues, and then there are like 3 different ways of answering the question. So I'd like for you to do that for me, and it's on Google Forms. It's on Google. So it will go directly, Google will calculate it and add it up for me and do the math. And then I'll have some basis for planning the series of shows that I will be reading, that I'll be hosting over the next year. I'd also, by the way, if you have good ideas, please, if you'll tell me where I can get some money to do it, that would help, because we need funds. This project doesn't pay for itself. Oh, it's not very expensive, but it certainly does need funding. And so anybody who has a good idea of how to get the grant that would help pay the cost of running these shows, it would be very, very, very helpful. But that's not a condition. I just want your surveys. So I won't read the whole list here. To find out what the list consists of, go to that chat. Now go into the chat box and you will see the link that I put. There's a big purple MS is my initial, and then that is the link. All right. So Janet, thank you. Now, does this connect with what you're doing? If we had a conversation, in fact, what I'll probably do is have maybe 3 different times during the year, have a forum discussing this one question, because we'll have 3 times for each one of the 20 issues. Maybe 3 times we'll have a conversation about whether or not it's a good idea to have climate change education in the schools. Would this, obviously, people who'd like to be in on that conversation, right?
I do. I'm a longtime member of the Suzuki Elders, and they've recently formed a cross-country group called Seniors for Climate. And we are all on the same boat, sailing together, trying to get something accomplished, as well as calling out politicians, of course, for what they haven't done and the suffering they've caused.
I'm having goose pimples right now because I'm so thrilled. Because I have this feeling that, sometimes things happen and it's serendipity, that all these things come together at the right moment. I did not say when I was a minute ago explaining my next project, I did not say that there is a grant program that the Canadian government runs in which they ask any people who want to get the grant, do it because they work with seniors in trying to help seniors do something meaningful. So I will, because my friends, I'm in a month, I'm going to be 93.
Oh,
So my friends tend to be pretty old. Now, the looks of most of you look a little younger, but my friends tend to be pretty old. And I did the last couple of days, I did a calculation about the people who appeared on my show within the last 12 months. There were 105 or 106 people who've been on one of the forums that I run. And I made a really good guess as to their age. Usually I could find out their age by looking with Google to find something about their CV or something like that. And I figured that 56% of them turn out to have been at least 55 years old for sure. So they count as seniors according to this government grant. And then there are another 25% or so that I can't be sure. They're marginal. They look to be in their late 50s or early 60s. So, but I can't say for sure that they're older. But I did this calculation so that I could say, you see, we do invite old people to participate. And in fact, they are the main people who do this. Anyway, it's so interesting that you're working with a group of seniors for climate change. And I do want to work with you and talk to you on Zoom privately, if you will, Janet.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
And it's toward the program is aimed toward October the 1st, which is Seniors Day. I don't know if I've got that quite right. It's a Seniors Day anyway. And that's what the program is about at the moment.
All right. Well, so we'll have a conversation. Anybody else on this? Do you have some information that might be helpful in planning? I will make a point of, whenever possible, inviting seniors to be panelists, and of course they won't be the only ones, but it will. I want to be able to say that that's what I'm doing, because then I can apply for this grant. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I put a link to it in your chat.
Okay, if you have something you'd like to tell us about this seniors group, because I had not heard about it, and tell us what you all do.
It's sort of being formed, and it's a little loose because it's across the country. It's Seniors National.
Mm-hmm.
And so each group or each location is sort of on its own to determine what they would like to do and how to go about it to do something about climate change for October the 1st. Mm-hmm. I'd like to be ahead of that, because I'd like to be talking to schools or somebody in a school before that, because of the fall term. Get ahead of the fall term.
Mm-hmm. So what would you plan to have seniors go into schools to talk about climate?
It's a possibility. Those who are prepared to do that, well up on it, and of course there are a good many who are well educated in the subject. I was trying to. My great thought was that I would try and encourage schools to add it to their curriculum. Mm-hmm. Because of the cause and effect. The effect is trauma. When you go through one of these things, it's a great experience that children, I'm sure, don't have much insight into, and to prepare them from K to 12 or gradually, I think is probably a good idea. I've been told that somebody somewhere in this province, in Nova Scotia, tried to approach a school and they were turned down by the principal and the vice principal.
Why? Are there? See, that's one of the things I don't know anything about. Are there rules about what can be taught in the schools that if there's a set of rules, then of course I guess the principal has to follow them. But how do they decide what a particular teacher can put into her or his classroom? Who decides this? Do students and teachers have some say in what they want to learn? What happens if a kid goes home and complains? I was taught today that global warming is reality, and the parents don't believe it. And what happens? How does this all work out? The politics of deciding the curriculum for public schools. I just don't know anything about it.
I don't have a great understanding of it either. There is the provincial, here, and I can tell you a little bit what's happening here. There are a lot of sites. There must be 15 or more sites that are promoting teaching climate change one way or another, through one group or another, including
in public schools.
Yes, including the province. The province has its own site and as an aid to schools. But if the teacher doesn't want to do it, that's my understanding, they don't get to do it. If the teacher does, they can. Some of them are, the few that are doing it are just shining with it. But the board apparently does not have necessarily any control over the teachers if they don't, or their principals, perhaps, as I should say. Perhaps it goes to, if the principal can refuse it, then of course.
If the principal says no, then the teacher can't override that.
Apparently.
But if the principal says yes, the teacher doesn't have to do it anyway if he or she doesn't want to.
Yeah. But
Sandy, you have your hand up. Do you know about these things?
Well, a little bit. I do know that in Canada, and I'm sure there's similar arrangements in other nation states. Education is a provincial authority domain, so it is the provincial Ministry of Education which says yes or no to curriculum. So there's curricula that are created for all of the courses that are taught in our schools at all grade levels. And I'm talking about the elementary and high school levels. So therefore there are curricula created, and it's really difficult to probably insert a new and added subject because there are such problems nowadays, so many challenges that our school system is facing. So I think I just want to suggest that a couple of ways that climate change could be inserted into school curricula, like two things I would suggest is getting to know the school teachers and then coming in as a guest speaker. That's one way, like to present like specific types of knowledge that different speakers have. And then the person who is investigating and wanting to be invited, and for example, Janet's organization could look into, for example, Nova Scotia, okay, what are the current curricula and how could we, liaise with principals and teachers in different school districts. And the other thing is, I think it would be wise to advocate not for climate change as a separate curriculum, a one-off, but it should be interwoven into different types of courses, such as the sciences, also the arts, also even, English literary works and stories about climate change and, how climate is impacted on people. Like, be very creative with it. And that would be a way then to, if one is creative and flexible in how it could be inserted into already existing standard courses, then parent groups, for example, like people who are right-wing extremists, there are those types of parent groups across Canada and in the United States who are really interfering with school curricula and even taking their children out of classrooms where something is being taught that they don't agree with.
What I wonder is, are there packages of audiovisual materials, I suppose there must be, that have been produced with the idea of being, this is for eighth graders, or this is for, 11th graders or something like that. That could be, because I don't know how many teachers are capable of really giving good answers to students' questions about technical matters. Now, I have a lot of contact with people who are scientists working on global issues, and I have to say, very frequently I'm involved in a conversation where I can't follow what they're saying because I'm not a scientist, and they're talking in chemical terms and things like that. Maybe packages of materials could be provided. But then of course it isn't the same as having a live Q&A session in which the students ask questions of some authority who can answer them. Peter, you live often in Italy nowadays, and you of course also in Cambridge in England. So you probably know.
Well, there are lots of packages of climate change research, and there's a one which is a British one, and I'm just trying to remember it. It's called just it's not called Just a Minute. It's something like that.
No, I tell you what, if you can find it later, send it to me by email, or if you find it during the show, put it in the chat. We have a website, and that we post this show like we post all the other forums on the website as well as on YouTube. And I will put sometimes I put as sort of a subtext. I'll put down links that people can see. But afterwards, if you want to comment or discuss these things, you have further thoughts after the show is over, wait a day or so until I can put this onto the website, and it will be, the forum will be called Episode 619, Global Town Hall, July 2024. And you can find where on the website, which is called tosavetheworld.ca, you can find a scroll window, and the scroll window has all 600 and will be 19 of these forums, and you can click on any one of them, open them, and watch the show or listen to it as an audio podcast. You can, when you're driving your car or something like that, you can't watch it, but you can listen to it as an audio. Okay. So anyway, that'll be good if you go there later. And then if you have further information, post it there, and other people can come and pick it off in the comment column. Okay. Good. All right. Now, where were we? I think Charles Tauber arrived. Hello, Charles. How's everything in Vukovar?
Oh, what can I say?
Well,
Difficult.
mhm.
We're in difficult financial situation, and we're getting more and more requests for work on the psychological side of conflict. The idea of conflict transformation in terms of the psychological side and the conflict transformation side. We teach the two together, and we work with people on their needs, and that works. It's a very good formula. People, as I say virtually every time I come here, people don't have a place where they can get their emotions out and where they can get their feelings out. And that's something we provide. And that's critical if they're going to go further.
Mm. Well, bless your heart. It's the cause is so wonderful, and the challenge is so serious that I always take my hat off to you, but then I shake my head because I can't do anything else.
Yeah. We're also working with some deserters.
Oh,
Some
deserters from what?
from the Russian army.
They're in Croatia. They're in Vukovar.
No, they're in various places.
Oh yeah.
And they're trying to get out. They're trying to get to Europe, and we're working with a Quaker who is pulling them together, and we are trying to work, as I say, on the psychological side. The very fact that we're there is important to them, that they see that there is support from outside.
But how much support is there? I mean,
Very little. Very little.
that's my impression. I have just done another couple of weeks ago. I did another talk show about the situation of not deserters from the Russian military, but men who fled from Russia to avoid being sent to the army to kill Ukrainians. And
Yes,
there are at least 1 million men who have left, but they are having one terrible time because when they go, they usually have to go to a former Soviet country because
That's right.
the internal passports will allow them into places like Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or a few other countries. They can get into those countries, but then things, they can't settle properly and they find problems there. Now, one of them tells me he's being followed by the KGB twice. Well, he calls them the KGB. They're called FSB, really, but same idea. And that he's being followed, and they kill people. It's clearly dangerous. He needs to get out of there, and he needs to go to a country where he'd be safer. But I talked to 4 of them in that talk show about 2 weeks ago. You can find it. I've forgotten what I called it, but if you go to that scroll window, you can easily find a recent one. And these are they can't get into the EU. They can't easily get into the US. And certainly there's a man who has 2 grown children who are American, and he can't get into the US, even though he lived in the US 9 years himself. He can't get into he could get in maybe by himself in another 6 or 8 months, maybe a year. But he's got a second family, and they have 3 children, the second family. And those people will have to wait 9 years because the US backlog of immigration cases applying to bring in his own family take another 9 years. So
getting into the EU is very, very good.
what's the matter with those people? We should be out in the street welcoming these guys with garlands of flowers. These are people who are putting their lives at risk to do the right thing.
Exactly. And of course, they all have difficulties because they can't get in touch with their families. Many of them, they're afraid of being traced. Recently, one man was arrested for 24 hours or something. And luckily, because of some pressure, he got out. But the question is, where will he go? There sometimes are flights to Sarajevo.
Sarajevo?
Bosnia.
Yeah,
Really?
to Bosnia, yes. And from there, they can conceivably get across the Croatian border, which is
Well, I'm told that it's easy for them to get into Serbia because Serbia is like Russia. They are very pro-Russian in this conflict with Ukraine.
yeah, but these people,
And they even have a battalion of Serbian army fighting alongside with the Russians.
yes, but Meta, these are people who are disobeying Russian laws, and they will be arrested in Serbia.
Mhm.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Well, here we have an example of exactly what we're talking about. Alexei Prokorenko. Hello, dear. How are you? You're in Warsaw still?
Yeah, I'm still in Warsaw, doing fine, thank you. Just waiting for a decision on my case. It will have been 9 months in August, on August 3. since I filed my case, which is
Sorry, your case is application to become like a landed immigrant to, or what? What?
a
what
refugee,
asking?
international protection, and it takes so long. I understand, because like Ukrainians and Belarusians can make it in 4 to 6 months, or sometimes even shorter, sometimes 3 months. But for Russians, it takes about a year, because I guess they're making their own checks for possible cooperation with Russian special services. I guess that's my that's what I can.
Well, how could they
guess
find
for.
out anyway? Let's assume you were doing that. I mean, from talking to you in your heart of hearts, you're clearly, it's the kind of person you are shines out, and everybody here knows very well what kind of guy you are.
Mhm.
But if they suspect that you are some kind of spy coming
Mhm.
in, what do they have to do to find out? I mean, how could they find out?
I don't know. Maybe they have their own ways to do that. They're performing some official checks, because I hear recently that they have changed the tactics that they use. As you might remember, in 2018 there was a very painful affair when two dimwits tried to poison a former KGB officer in Salisbury, Britain.
Oh yeah,
And they were caught, and they
what's
were.
the name of this guy? I can't remember, but I know
His name was Skripal.
Yeah.
And since then they were exposed, they were ridiculed, and since then the tactics of the secret services became different. So they no longer, and some of their nests in Warsaw, in Prague, some of the big embassies, which also were home to large intelligence pools. They have been kind of disbanded, and so they changed the tactics. They apply local people, local gangsters, local mobsters to sow dissent here, to make subversions. For example, recently before the Olympics, there were 3 arsons on TGV, on French railroads. And it is said that it was just inspired by Putin's secret services, and they use the people, the local people. In addition to that, I read that some of the KGB agents got infiltrated into Europe, pretending that they're refugees. That's a real danger. So people they're using even the phenomenon that they criticize. They're using it to get into Europe, to pretend that they have been persecuted, and then they do terrible things in Europe.
how did they get caught? If you know that that's who they were, somebody found out. How did they find out?
But that can only be found out after they do something, after they put something on fire, because they have the so-called legends. They pretend, they're taught how to pretend. They're not like officers. They're not agents. All their lives, they're being taught how to lie efficiently. Including Putin. He's a professional liar, I would say. He was taught to lie in his KGB school.
Yeah.
And that's what they do perfectly. They can't probably build a good economy. They can't provide for their population, for their people. They can't build a country even when they have lots of money from oil. But they can lie perfectly. That's what you cannot take from them.
And by the way, the Americans do the same thing with the School of the Americans. One good thing with the new Labour government in UK is that they have stopped the deportation of asylum seekers to Rwanda.
Oh, okay. Because of the election? That the new guy said he wouldn't do it, or what?
Yeah, the Labour government said they wouldn't do it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, that sounds like good common sense. That was a nutty idea in the first place. Katia, help us out. What if you were going to fix the world today? What issue would you tackle first? Then we'll go from there.
I guess I was thinking about what's happening in Iran and with the new president that is gonna just start just ruling the country the day after tomorrow. And that it just got my mind kind of busy if his foreign policy, domestic policy is going to be different from the former president or not, or he's going to just do the same. He promised a lot of things to people. They just vote for him, but we don't know yet if it's going to be any change or not. But unfortunately,
but he is much more progressive, so far as everybody knows, right? Or a little bit more progressive, maybe.
Yes.
How much more progressive do you think he is?
Based on what he promised and based on his knowledge, he's much higher level than the former president. He is MD, doctor, surgeon. He was, and we hope that he understands the word better, and he's gonna put some effort to make some economy changes, and probably foreign policy is gonna be different. Hopefully, for people, that's they hope for. But on the other side, the things that are going on with the election in U.S., those are, and what is happening in Bangladesh, and so those are the very main subject. And also I'm just go ahead. Sorry.
If you wanted to go visit, could you go home and visit?
Based on what Canada, I just saw on the Canadian websites, they just recommend we don't go and visit because it doesn't seem very safe for us. We don't know if we can come back or not. But I haven't been there for the past 6-7 years. And to be honest with you, I'm not feeling safe enough to go back.
Okay, well, that's the answer. And I think that would be true probably for Alexei too, wouldn't it? Alexei, you wouldn't go back to Moscow now, would you?
Not until the regime changes, because it's neither safe for me to go back. I don't know how unsafe it is actually, but not that I would like to try. Nor it is desirable. Nor it is desirable because I think I have no place in current Russia. I don't think I have a future there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't have anyone to talk to, really. I don't have anyone to convince, because everyone who wanted to know, they already know, and all the rest of the people are just on one or another, on one or the other side of the let's say, I don't know, of history.
Nobody said anything about Palestine here, and given that one of the things you started off talking about, which was why is it that people love dictatorships or tolerate dictatorships? And I think one of the questions or the reasons is simply that Palestine gives you a wonderful opportunity to see a dictatorship at work and destroying people's lives with nothing being done about it. So you've got something where thousands of people are being killed, hundreds every day, and the people doing it, which include the United States government are happily tolerating this and doing nothing about it. And so that when you think about what should I do, like when we're talking about Bangladesh, why do people carry out slaughter like that and tolerate it? Answer: because somebody else is doing that and is tolerating it. It's an appalling situation, and I don't see any way that anything can actually be done. At least nothing has been done.
Well, something could be done if the U.S. government would make its strong position, and it's possible that Kamala Harris, but it's going to be another 5 months before she could make a change.
Well, I saw her shaking hands with Netanyahu.
Yes,
and
well, she's still part of Biden's government.
That's possibly the most appalling
But she
thing.
said that they've said that she's at least more sympathetic to the Palestinians. I don't know whether that makes any difference to her policy. She's not going to immediately make any drastic changes, I think. In fact, I just got I think this morning or last night, got one of Gwynn Dyer's, he writes a column twice a week, which he publishes in something like 180 newspapers around the world. And he's a friend of mine. So he's been sending them to me. And his current one is about how, I think it's even titled something like, who cares how many Gazans die? That's the angle he's taking, is that people absolutely, there are 40,000 or so Gazans have been killed in this war, and nobody seems to care. The only people they worry about are getting the hostages, the Israeli hostages out. And he gets pretty heated in his column on that topic, bless his heart, because that's certainly the thing that you need to pay attention to is 40,000 people have been killed and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So here I am on my soapbox, and I should stop long enough to say hi to Brian. Brian Van Herzen is here, and then I'm going to let Mohammed have the floor. But hello, Brian, how are you?
Hi, Meta. How are you? Just waking up.
Good. You're just waking up, yeah, because you're in Australia, huh? Okay. Oh, listen, before I turn the mic over, to, give the floor to Mohammed, let me ask you a question. Because earlier on this hour, I was asking people if they could help me get in touch with Indigenous people for forums about global warming issues and climate repair issues. And I want to have conversations among people who don't normally have any contact with each other. They may agree, but probably often they will disagree. But what I want to ask, I understand that at least this guy, Hugh Hunt at Cambridge, told me that the Indigenous people in Australia who live close to the coast where the Great Barrier Reef is located, that those Indigenous communities are very supportive of what is being done by way of experimenting on marine cloud brightening to save the Great Barrier Reef. Can you put me in touch with some people that I could invite to be on the show to discuss this? People from any Indigenous community, but preferably people who have an opinion about these issues.
Yes, I do have one or two contacts with the Indigenous community here in Queensland, Australia, and I think they could bring a perspective on that. There is actually a professional group called the Sea Rangers that are supported by the Australian government, and they are seasteaders, if you will. What I mean by that is they are caring for the Great Barrier Reef, and they are largely Indigenous, and they live up and down the coast of Queensland, Australia. And I believe, have a role. I mean, Sea Rangers are funded by the Australian government, and they take care of reef issues locally and regionally. So I think there's some Sea Rangers there, and there's some think tanks as well. And so there are several people I could think of to try to put you in touch with.
That'll be great. You could, if you want to just send it by email, that would be okay, but maybe we should have a conversation to.
There's another group. We do a lot of marine permaculture down in Tasmania, and there are indigenous folks that live on Bruny Island, and they care a lot about regenerating the kelp forest down there. So that's something we've already established over the past decade. And so I would encourage communications with some of the indigenous people in Tasmania, because they have come out and said, yes, we want you to regenerate the kelp forest that's been lost over the past half a century due to global warming.
There's a professor at the University of Tasmania that I've been trying to reach. I can't offhand recall his name, but but he's somebody with a lot of expertise. And I think, I've been wanting to recruit him to one of my talk shows, but he never answers. If maybe you can, do you know some of these guys, and maybe you can do some,
Yeah. We work with them, and there's one fellow that I've worked with for almost a decade, Professor Craig Johnson, who's quite an expert at seaweed forests, and he's helping to design and coordinate these programs to actually see if we can regenerate the kelp forest. 95% of that kelp forest has been lost due to global warming, ocean warming. The water's too warm, the nutrient levels are too low, and now the sea urchin barrens have taken over. And it's a bistable ecosystem. You don't solve the sea urchin barren problem until you've taken care of 99% of the sea urchins. So that's an ongoing problem. And I would say,
what do you do to get rid of them?
Well, you have to harvest the sea urchins and rehabilitate them. And that means actually feed them lots of kelp, which is what they eat. But when the density of sea urchins exceeds, first of all, their appetite goes up as they get warmer, unlike most invertebrates. And once you get more than 3 sea urchins per square meter, then they stop eating the apples and they start eating the apple trees. And literally they buzz cut the apple trees at the base like a beaver. And then before you know it, the whole kelp forest is gone. And they're walking zombies, walking around looking for food. So it's a bistable situation that's brought on by global warming. It's now that it's sea urchin barrens, it's not going back to kelp forest off the coast of California either until 99% of those urchins are taken care of.
How can you get 99%? Nobody has that kind of.
You can locally. First of all, there are oases. I work with wonderful commercial diver fisherman, Jeff Masson in Santa Barbara, and he has the concept of kelp oases, and we're trying to get funding for that right now. And the kelp oasis works by finding a ledge or something that is surrounded by a cliff or some other geographic feature that's impassable or difficult to pass by sea urchins. You clear off the ledge, you apply marine permaculture principles to the oasis, and you can get that portion of kelp forest back. So it can be done. It takes a fair amount of work, and we'd love to try it out in the Santa Barbara Channel, along with our deep cycling of marine permaculture, which should get. We've lost most of the kelp forest off San Miguel Island in the Santa Barbara Channel, and it's dropping on all the Channel Islands, which is a national.
You're talking about off California.
Yeah, that's just another region where there's the kelp forest, the giant kelp forest is diminishing in the same way or very analogous way to what's happening in Tasmania.
And so you should maybe elaborate a little why it matters. Who cares besides you that that we're losing kelp, and why should we care?
Well, a quarter of all marine species spend some part of their life cycle on the coral reef, and I believe close to that is also true for the kelp forest. So if we care about half the species in our ocean, we care about these habitats, because without these habitats, life in the ocean will collapse, a significant fraction of it. And of course, we're talking about cascading collapses. You collapse the coral reef and you affect the seabirds. You collapse the seabirds and you affect the shoreline and all the phosphorus and nutrients that the seabirds provide. And if you collapse the kelp forest, you also collapse that. This is, Dave Holmgren and actually Bill Mollison, his professor, got his ecological training on the very kelp forest that has disappeared today and we're trying to regenerate with marine permaculture. And I missed him by 6 months. He passed away just before I got down here to Australia. But that legacy of multi-generations is so important because Bill taught the world permaculture by his understanding of the ecological richness and diversity of that kelp forest in Tasmania. So to me, it's so poignant that our global warming has just about destroyed it. But with marine permaculture, applying the permaculture design principles to the marine environment, we could perhaps regenerate that ecosystem in time before it disappears entirely from the continent of Australia. That's what's on the line here. And by the way,
go ahead. Sorry.
I've got to add one more, and that is we are just beginning to learn about the importance of biogenic aerosols. And that is, we know that algae produces natural biogenic aerosols. That's actually the ocean smell and feeling that you have by the ocean. There are aerosols from sea spray, aerosols from kelp forest, and those aerosols play a pivotal role in forming cloud condensation nuclei that form the marine clouds that we care about in cooling our coastal lines, our coastal communities, and our regions. In fact, all of Central and Southern California are on the coastline are affected by those marine clouds. We have, in the last 100 years, lost 1/3 hectares of kelp forest in the United States and Australia alone. That's 2 countries out of 200. How many? We don't even know. No one alive today has a living memory of the kelp forest that existed in the 1800s. And so we've lost actually 2 orders of magnitude of kelp forest off the coast of California, I would argue. The first in the 1930s with farming, and the second in the 20s and in the 2000s with the global warming phenomenon. And so we need to get back to pre-industrial levels until we have regenerated 1/3 hectares of kelp forest, at least in those 2 countries and more globally. We will not be at the pre-industrial levels of the biogenic aerosols that were produced naturally by the healthy kelp forest that kept the marine clouds bright and with a high cloud fraction, and actually kept coastal California cooler than it is today.
I think you're referring to something that I've only begun to learn a little bit about. Clive Ellsworth and Franz Weste have been on my show 2 or 3 times trying to explain it to me, but I'm a slow learner. And both of them are talking about how the low level of white clouds actually produce, is it hydrochloric acid? That is very important, and that it's produced much more along coastal areas than it is over the ocean, deeper ocean. And so the question is, can they learn how the coastal areas are producing this chlorine, which I guess becomes a radical that is useful reducing methane in the atmosphere, as well as at the same time it whitens the clouds and increases the reflectivity of the clouds, and therefore in 2 different ways, the albedo effect and also the carbon removal effect. In 2 different ways, the same phenomenon has an impact, beneficial impact on reducing global warming. And I can't follow all this too well, but have I garbled it a little bit?
Well, chlorine is just one element of many that are important in natural biogenic aerosols. Chlorine abounds in the ocean. Sodium chloride is one of the most common salts in the ocean. So there's chlorine everywhere. And when we have healthy kelp forests and plankton forests and sea spray, we produce biogenic aerosols that are composed of anything from their little natural molecules like dimethyl sulfide that produces little tiny cloud condensation nuclei, and even sea spray, and it's small enough, will go up as a little droplet in the atmosphere, dry out, and turn into a salt molecule that is a salt cloud and condensation nuclei. All of these get wafted up through what's called the boundary layer. And that's 1,000 meters from the surface all the way up to the base of the cloud layer. And that's the boundary layer that circulates just naturally with the sea breezes. And those cloud condensation nuclei will go up there, and they will actually contribute to healthy cloud cover that occurs naturally thanks to these processes.
Mhm.
So it is significant how important it is, and I think we need to recognize the role of nature in keeping our planet cool, and that's going to be important to regenerate.
Mhm. I was looking for ways of turning on your face, but I can't turn on your face.
I'll get you some light, and then actually I've got moonlight right now, but it's not enough. It's almost a full moon here. It's beautiful. It's a last quarter moon.
Oh,
It's stunningly clear. Just I have to share with you that last night I got a new telescope and we did some stargazing in the evening. And down here we can see the center of the galaxy, and it was just spectacular. I mean, the number of Messier objects that I could see, dozens, literally. It was just a beautiful stargazing event. So I just, when you get a chance, come to the Southern Hemisphere and take a look at the center of our beautiful galaxy.
well, I was told that last week we had a harvest moon here in Toronto. I had to be told what a harvest moon was, and I can't explain it to anybody, but there you go. Hello, Brian. Nice to see
Greetings.
you. Now, let me see if I can turn on the speaker view so that I give you speak so that your face will show.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm very happy to be here, Meta. Thank you for sending the invitation. And it's great to talk about how we regenerate life on land and sea, because literally no civilization has survived a collapse of the seas and the soils. And the problem of climate disruption is one of famine, and it's one of food security. We're going to have to be front and center about growing enough food, not only for humanity, but for 8 million species that can't vote. And we need to be stewards for those 8 million species, because we're on this spaceship planet Earth together. And without them, we do not survive.
Well, bless your heart. And you see a colleague of yours, Peter Wadhams, is also with us. Janet is somebody in Halifax, Nova Scotia, that we had a bit of a conversation with earlier, because she's interested in having elderly people participate in teaching or in promoting climate change education in the public schools. So we talked a little bit about how to do that. And I don't know, is there anybody in Australia that is giving classes to elementary and high school kids about the climate?
Yes, there are. In fact, we worked with them just over the past 2 years at the Woodford Folk Festival, and they are focusing on educational programs across Australia that include kelp forest education and marine education and all the rest. And because Peter's here, I've got to add just one thing, and that is Peter has really done an incredible job to showcase the case for ice and the need for ice. And this is a key part of what we call planetary rebrightening, because our planet is dimmer and duller than it was just 20 years ago. And half of it is due to sea ice and half of it is due to marine clouds. And what we need to do is educate people that we need to rebrighten our planet one region and one locale at a time, because that's what will be socially acceptable first. But your work in the Hudson Bay, working on sea ice and marine clouds, is going to be absolutely essential to rebrighten our planet back to the way it was just 20 years ago. So Peter, great to see you. And it's so great to see you. And I'm glad you're here.
You got a job to do, certainly.
We do. It's a big one, but we should start one community at a time. And Meta, you were spot on with the idea of going after the Hudson Bay first, because that's what will be socially acceptable. We are finding from India to the Philippines that is community-led projects that are going to see the light of day first. And we are at the Climate Foundation, we're about boots on the ground and fins in the water, building hectares of kelp forest regeneration and building community by community. Communities can choose to rebrighten their local region with marine clouds, with other approaches that will ultimately have a huge effect locally, regionally. And once people see how they can rebrighten their regions, then they can go and decide what to do from a global government's perspective.
Okay, now you and Peter, all of the contacts that you've built in your career in the Canadian North or anywhere else. But when I said I want your address book with regard to the Australian Indigenous people, I don't want to limit it to that, because I want to contact Indigenous people all over the place who are engaged with global warming issues, and that I can bring in to be part of on various conversations about
Right.
the next year. So
There's a huge amount of work we need to do there. Yeah, we're a little behind on that, because we need to reach out and really talk about the way things were 50, 100 years ago, and really say, look, there are local things that we can do, because there are a lot of folks that have instilled fear, uncertainty, and doubt into some Indigenous communities, and that caused even issues at the United Nations. So we're behind on the resources needed for that showcase and outreach to really develop. What we're working on is to develop a list of approaches that we can bring to communities and co-design custom solutions that work for them. And then the community-led projects are the ones that will see the light of day first. And this is going to be an ongoing process, but we're seeking funding for that, and also to support our climate fellow, Sergey, who's planning on researching this connection between kelp forests and healthy marine clouds. And that's something that we need to really build resources for, and we're doing that this year. So anyone who's interested, feel free to get in touch with us at climatefoundation.org.
Put any links if you want into the chat, and it'll go onto the website when I put the thing up for this. Good. Okay, I have been holding off Mohammed, who has had his hand up for half an hour or so. Mohammed, what have I been cheating you out of? Tell us what's on your mind before we go, because we're getting close to the end of the hour.
Yeah, thank you giving me the opportunity again to talk, because we have a new person who joined just now. I want to show some picture that this is the healing going on in Bangladesh.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
This is how the government rubber bullet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like inside the mall also they went and they shoot on sight. So this is the bullet they use to kill. So inside they hide even the washroom. They went inside the washroom and they killed.
Mohammed, I mean, it is just gross, but and I don't want to end with this terrible feeling that we have. I feel when you talk, and I feel so frustrated because there's nothing I can think of doing that would be of very much value for you. Can anybody come up with a hopeful proposal for how we can do anything to protect these people, or to help Mohammed in his quest for justice and peace? Let's put our minds to work on solving just a little of the world's problem there.
Yes, I'm going to quote Buckminster Fuller, who I have a huge respect for. And he said, if we want change, we must not and cannot rail and should not rail against the edifices that exist, but instead build something new, and the new model will make the old model obsolete. And I feel as though I don't have the detailed knowledge, but I wonder if Gandhi might have done some of that. And I think there are ways to explore how do we build something new in our thinking, in our permaculture of land, our permaculture of the ocean, and our social permaculture, which has to be new ways that we organize ourselves in participatory democracy that is bottom up and is grassroots. Because we have the technology now to connect millions of people together. And so we can rebuild democracy in a way that is going to be much more participatory. And, we've barely started. I mean, everybody has a smartphone. I mean, even in India, Bangladesh, I mean, people can communicate. And now that is an element for participatory democracy in a free world. So this is what we need to regenerate. We need to build something new, and Buckminster Fuller has shown us the way.
We have to create a new institutions that will simply make the old ones so obsolete. And I am actually engaged with, there's not much time to talk about it here, but I've joined something called the World Citizens Assembly, and it's doing exactly what you've said. This is a group of people, I don't think it's existed very long, and I've only been in it a couple of weeks, but they are all over the world. And they are meeting once a week to have a citizens' assembly discussion about various topics. So the first meeting that I went to by Zoom was one where they were planning the next series of citizen forums, what they were going to talk about. They decided that they wanted, of course, they've been talking about war for a while, and that's about to end. So they want to talk about what is the next topic they want to explore. And one of them has to do with geoengineering. That's what I was proposing, that they give some thought to having a conversation about using technologies for climate repair. That may or may not be what they adopt, but at any rate, this group of people, if you go online for World Citizens Assembly, they have a website, and you can join, and then as they are speaking in their own languages, I mean, it could be Portuguese, it could be all kinds of languages that they were using. Zoom now is able to translate that instantly with the text that runs down as they're speaking, a simultaneous translation into this written text. So you can watch them talking in their own language and see it translated into your language. And it works. It works well enough so that I will be undoubtedly forming real friendships with these people. I've started getting acquainted with them, and I think that is really an important thing, that it needs to be a situation where you can have groups of people who get to know each other over a period of time, but they're doing their work in their own living rooms or in their, wherever they are with their cell phones or whatever. And I'm just really impressed with it as the model for how we can have truly democratic United Nations. We could have a new house at the UN. That's a long way off, but a parliamentary assembly that's not run by government people, but that's run by people living in their own living rooms, talking about the various issues that they need to discuss.
Yeah. So just briefly,
yeah.
Yesterday, just to add to that, we had a roundtable yesterday, including the Club of Rome and the Climate Foundation and dozens of other organizations. The report of that's coming up very shortly, but there were several representatives from Club of Rome and United Nations there, and they're working on a new charter for the United Nations, which I think is very interesting. And I think there are new approaches that involve this bottom-up roundtable kind of decentralized governance that can start with our online Zoom calls. And literally, I think there's a proposal for an Earth Systems Treaty to be signed for all citizens of ocean planet Earth to actually, be a new way forward. So let's build something new that can lead towards improved governance around the world.
Wonderful. And Dale Dewar is just arriving as we're about to end. Hello, Dale. What's up?
Oh, you're about to end. Oh my goodness, it should have been 12 to 2.
Dale, I'll be happy if it's 2 to 4, because then I'll be able to join from Australia and bring my Australian friends. So anyway, welcome. We're on the same wavelength.
All right. Well,
I was just getting ready to go to a powwow, hence the powwow earrings.
And you got powwow earrings. How beautiful. Good for you. That's wonderful. Okay, guys, that we've done it. It's now 4:00, and I'm going to say goodbye. Those of you who have not checked out the Udemy course that we've created, it would be very useful. And actually, you guys, you climatologists, can use a little help promoting that for peace education and I'm sorry, about global warming education, because it's a course on how to become an influencer, how to become a real activist, a climate change activist. And if you go, I'll put the link onto this edited version so you can go there and enroll, or at least check it out and see whether it's something you might want to take. It would take you about, if you do the whole project, it would take about 10-15 hours. But if you cheat and just look at the videos, you can do it in 2 hours, and that's worth doing too. Okay, bless your hearts, guys. Thanks so much. And I'm going to say goodbye now. See you next week, next month. Take care. Project Save the World produces these forums. This is episode number 619. You can find all 600 plus forums on our website. Just go to tosavetheworld.ca and look at the scroll window on the homepage. You can scroll around until you find a topic that interests you. And then you click and you can watch the forum right there. Project Save the World also has produced a short course for people who want to become leaders in the movement to repair the climate. This course is available free of charge on the online learning platform Udemy. It consists of 5 short lessons about the use of soil amendments as a way of removing carbon from the atmosphere and sequestering it in the earth, thereby improving agriculture and increasing the world's food production while reducing the need for synthetic fertilizers. The course is entitled Become a Climate Change Influencer. You can learn more about it at this link, www.udemy.com/course/become-a-climate-change-influencer. Finally, Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine, which now serves as a free of charge newsletter to help mobilize knowledge about 6 global threats to humankind. We gladly email the magazine as a PDF or link to any interested organization in the world that works to prevent a global catastrophe involving war and weapons, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, or cyber risks. Just email us at office@peacemagazine.org and we'll add your group's email address without charge to our list. For individual subscriptions at $20 Canadian per year, go to pressreader.com on your browser and search for Peace Magazine.